A new poll has predicted a three-way tie at the next general election, with Labour cabinet ministers set to lose their seats and Reform UK's Nigel Farage holding the balance of power.
Why wouldn't he? I think that Keir Starmer is a lawyer, not a leader.
Welcome to the deep dive into a tectonic change in British politics today. For decades, the playground of just two main parties, Labour and the Conservatives, has been power in the United Kingdom. But a recent mega poll including more than 5,000 respondents has destroyed that long-held two-horse contest. This poll suggests that a three-way tie is already ahead of us. The Conservatives expected to gain 178 seats, Labour 174, and shockingly, Reform UK is expected to rise to 175 seats. Once a fringe party with just 5 seats, Reform UK today is a kingmaker in a political scene about to undergo extreme transformation.
They've got us topping the polls at 29%, with the Conservatives way down at 18%. Have a look at this map. That's the prediction for the number of seats we would win.
Reform UK will hold the balance of power at the next general election, according to a major new mega poll of over 5,000 voters, which for the first time has predicted in British politics a three-way tie. And now Nigel Farage is holding the balance of power. In the poll's findings, the Conservatives would win 178 seats, Labour 174 and Reform UK 175. Now,
today we will discuss what this means for Keir Starmer and Labour's long-term plans, the chances and problems facing Kemi Badenoch's Conservatives, and what a future may look like should Nigel Farage and Reform UK assume command of government. Get ready as we travel across the ramifications of this historic poll, as political game rules are being rewritten right before our eyes.
Not only do we have momentum, but if you want to beat Labour, if you want to get them out at the next general election, don't waste your vote with the Conservatives. Come with a winning team. Join Reform UK.
Now, the most likely government outcome of this would point to a Conservative Reform UK coalition.
In an astounding turn of events, the most recent MRP poll, commissioned by PLMR and examined by Electoral Calculus, suggests that the next UK general election would not see the conventional domination of Labour or the Conservatives. Rather, the figures suggest a virtually exactly balanced three-way split. The Conservatives with 178 seats, Labour at 174 seats, and Reform UK closely follows with 175 seats in terms of expected seat allocation.
It's always in the script. It's a two-horse race. First past the post keeps that balance of power that way. This poll, however, seems to put a bombshell under that. It could be a three-horse race, and there's so much detail in here. Chris, tell us more.
This is not only a statistical oddity, it also indicates a clear break from decades of British election history. A party outside the conventional two-party system is displaying for the first time the possibility to be really powerful in Parliament. The results of the poll follow Labour's resounding triumph back in 2024. Nevertheless, in just 7 months, popular sentiment seems to have changed drastically.
If there was a general election tomorrow, more people would vote for Nigel Farage and Reform than would vote for the Conservatives, and this is the very first time a poll has found this, for Labour as well.
Especially amazing is the explosion for Reform UK. Once seen as a marginal party, their expected leap from 5 seats to 175 has shocked political experts and people both. Though the latter seems more vulnerable to a Tory gain in another seat, the poll also forecasts notable seat losses for important Labour figures, with Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper expected to lose their constituencies and losses for eminent Conservatives like Jonathan Reynolds and even Health Secretary Wes Streeting. When we dissect these figures and patterns, it is abundantly evident that this survey marks a foreshadowing of possibly long-lasting changes in British politics, rather than only a fleeting period of unhappiness. The conventional alliances and political tactics of both Labour and the Conservatives are now under close examination as Reform UK becomes a potent third force. For the established parties, however, what does this imply practically, and how might this change ideas on national identity, economic inequality and immigration? Let's probe further into the effects on Labour first. For Labour, the results of this poll have somewhat worrisome consequences. Labour formerly possessed a strong majority, 424 MPs at the height of its power, under the direction of Sir Keir Starmer. Now, though, the estimate points to a spectacular fall to barely 178 seats. Along with a loss of parliamentary power, this sharp decline signals that many conventional Labour supporters are turning to an alternative voice that seems to appeal to people feeling let down by the present system. The argument over immigration seems to be one of the main causes speeding this change. Long champions of progressive ideas, including more liberal immigration policies, and even ideas to offer immigrant voting rights, Labour MPs have, although many people celebrate these ideas as progressive, they have also alienated some of the voters. These positions have been attacked as out of touch in economically deprived communities where local identity and job stability take front stage. Many of the voters in these areas believe that Labour has not done enough to handle the actual effects of immigration, including job competitiveness and strain on public services. Reform UK, a party advocating tighter immigration restrictions and an emphasis on supporting local businesses and communities, has seen doors opened by this criticism. According to the study, those who are unhappy with Labour's policies are ready to welcome a different story that presents immigration as a crucial concern needing more forceful management. Labour could lose not only parliamentary seats, but also the personal mandates of leaders like Angela Rayner and Yvette Cooper, stalwarts who once commanded great support in their constituencies, indicates that internal conflicts and a supposed lack of decisive leadership could be eroding the party's foundation. For Starmer and his team, the difficulty now comes from two directions. First, they have to take care of the very real worries of disillusioned voters, especially those in economically poor areas who feel left behind by apparently too utopian programmes. Second, Labour has to balance its progressive values with the pragmatic necessity to reclaim ground among conventional voters. Ignoring this could not only bring about electoral catastrophe in the near future, but also have long-term consequences on the party's identity and future survival. Apart from policy, one also has to consider perception. The findings of the poll have already begun to erode the impression of a unified, forward-looking Labour government. Labour runs the danger of being perceived as the party of business as usual, at a moment when voters are yearning change if important figures are expected to lose their seats, and if the party's basic policies are considered as insufficiently sensitive to urgent issues like immigration and economic decline. This decline of confidence might have major effects not only in the next election, but also in the larger ideological struggle for the soul of the United Kingdom. Furthermore, this striking change in public perception reflects more general social developments. The political terrain of Britain is not binary anymore. Voters are more open to considering substitutes even if it means straying from long-standing alliances. In this context, Starmer's Labour has to find a means to appeal to a more varied electorate, while simultaneously re-engaging with its traditional base, a challenge simpler said than done. Starmer is under pressure to present a clear, convincing vision that tackles the cultural and financial issues of our day, or risk handing further territory to an empowered third party. While Labour struggles with its own issues, the Conservative Party, run by Kemi Badenoch, finds itself in an equally dangerous position. According to the poll, the Conservatives would land 178 seats, about on par with Labour's anticipated 174. This near parity presents a variety of difficulties and strategic conundrums for a party that has traditionally prided itself on its solid base and capacity for forming government. The Conservative conundrum revolves mostly on the possibility of a split right-wing vote. Historically, the Conservatives have kept their supremacy by combining a wide range of right-leaning supporters. But that coalition runs the danger of breaking apart as Reform UK fast-picks support, particularly in a scenario whereby no one party has an absolute majority in Parliament. A fragmented right might reduce the Tories' negotiating strength. The party's navigation in these choppy waters tests Kemi Badenoch's leadership. The Conservatives have to keep their classic base, which consists of voters who support measured immigration, fiscal conservatism, and strong national security. Conversely, they are under pressure to appeal to a larger population that is more receptive to populist rhetoric and stricter immigration laws. The same concerns Reform UK supports. The prediction of a likely Conservative Reform alliance in the poll further mazes things. Should such a partnership develop, the Conservatives would be obliged to yield on important policy areas in order to suit Reform UK's populist agenda. This would involve a realignment of the party's position on immigration, economic policy, and even foreign affairs. A party that has historically depended on a reputation for stability and prudent government may find that this change alienates moderate voters while simultaneously drawing those who support a more extreme nationalist approach. Furthermore, adding ambiguity to the Conservative approach is the potential of coalition negotiations. Given the survey showing almost neck-and-neck support for the Tories and Labour, the Conservatives could be obliged into a power-sharing agreement. Under this situation, Kemi Badenoch would have to negotiate difficult terms that would balance the needs of her party's base with those of a coalition partner, whose agenda would diverge greatly from conventional Conservative principles. This developing situation also calls into doubt the long-term survival of the two-party system. For decades, the Conservatives have characterised British politics as a binary struggle with Labour, but if people are now ready to welcome a third alternative in Reform UK, then the ideological terrain is changing, demanding new partnerships, policy ideas, and maybe even a reassessment of what it means to be Conservative. Make sure to like and subscribe. The Conservatives will have to fast adjust to these evolving surroundings. Ignoring this could not only cost them votes in the next election, but also lessens their impact on the political debate in the United Kingdom. Every policy issue, from immigration to economic reform, will be examined via the prism of this new political reality as Reform UK grows as a major rival. Finding common ground with unhappy right-wing voters while preserving enough of the party's basic ideals to retain moderate supporters on board presents a difficulty for Badenoch and her staff. Once a minor participant with only 5 seats in Parliament, Reform UK is now projected to gain an incredible 175 seats, therefore representing perhaps the most dramatic change in this developing narrative. This extraordinary turnaround indicates a possible populist revolution that might change British politics for years to come, not only a statistical fluke. Nigel Farage, a man well known for his confrontational language as well as for his ability to appeal to the frustrations of unhappy voters, is driving Reform UK. Although Farage has long been a divisive character in British politics, the poll indicates that his message is more than ever resonating. Reform UK's explosive climb suggests that many people are yearning a radical alternative and are disappointed with the current parties, both Labour and the Conservatives. What then does a future under Nigel Farage and Reform UK seem to be? First of all, a basic change in the policy priorities of the country would have immediate effects. Reform UK is likely to advocate stricter immigration policies, closer borders, and a more nationalistic economic agenda. Particularly in regions that have historically concentrated on multiculturalism and global trade, these policies would probably stand a clear contrast from the present strategies of both Labour and the Conservatives. Furthermore, casting doubt on the character of coalition politics in the UK is Farage's prospective ascent to prominence. Given the survey indicating no one party will have an absolute majority, coalition government seems rather likely. Under such circumstances, Reform UK might have the balance of power and force any party it supports to implement its nationalist populist agenda. This might result in a coalition of equals, whereby the demands of the Reform UK voter base, those who believe the current quo has failed them, have great impact on policy decisions. Moreover, the explosion of Reform UK suggests more general social developments. It draws attention to a growing dissatisfaction among some voters, especially in economically depressed areas where conventional political pledges have not been able to yield actual benefits. Once devoted to Labour or the Conservatives, these voters are now receptive to a new political narrative that gives national sovereignty, local control top priority, and a more protectionist economic posture top importance. Should Reform UK take over, both domestic and foreign policies of the United Kingdom could be greatly changed. Domestically, policy may veer sharply towards tighter immigration laws, more law and order enforcement, and an emphasis on resurrecting once neglected conventional businesses under past administrations. Reform-led governments may take a more insular posture internationally, reassisting the UK's position in trade deals and worldwide alliances. This possible populist upheaval questions the long-standing political system. For decades, British politics has been under the presumption that only Labour or the Conservatives could run under efficiently. But with Reform UK becoming a realistic substitute, the whole political scene is compelled to consider the prospect that the old policies are obsolete. The emergence of a third force not only changes the mechanics of elections, but also makes one rethink national identity and government agendas. Nigel Farage's skill to convert populist rhetoric into practical policy will determine if he can present Reform UK as a real alternative. Should his efforts be successful, he might transform British politics in ways that have an impact much beyond the next general elections. Still, this drastic change also entails hazards. Populist policy's divisive character might aggravate social conflicts, and running a society with great division would provide a great difficulty. Still, for many voters, the promise of change, of a government that really listens to their complaints and meets their needs, outweighs these possible negatives. It's natural to wonder what the future holds if Nigel Farage and Reform UK were to assume command of the government as we stand at this historic junction. We can investigate some probable situations and their consequences even though every result is unpredictable. Could Reform UK establish either a majority government or a powerful coalition partner, we could witness significant policy reforms happening on several fronts. First, on immigration. Reform UK's agenda revolves on tighter border security and lower immigration overall. This promise offers many voters who feel behind their country a more safe and predictable national identity. Such measures, meanwhile, might also cause conflict with foreign allies and incite reaction from areas that have long profited from variety and multiculturalism. Second, under a reform-led administration, local industry and protectionism would probably take front stage in economic policy. There would be strong pressure to undo decades of neoliberal economic policy, given disgruntled voters in economically suffering areas supporting their emergence. Higher taxes, renegotiated trade agreements, and a fresh emphasis on home industry and agriculture might all follow from this. These policies might help some local businesses, but they could also sour long-standing trade ties and cause economic volatility in a highly linked world economy. Third, the change in political power could inspire a review of the United Kingdom's global posture. Under the influence of populist nationalism, a government may choose a more insular foreign policy, hence possibly reducing engagement in alliances and international organisations. Redefining the UK's place in a fast-shifting world order, this might have significant consequences for its security, commerce and diplomatic ties. Simultaneously, a reform-led government would have instant difficulties with governance. From being a disruptive outsider to a ruling party, the change is not easy. Changing radical policies while preserving stability and public confidence would be an enormous challenge. Furthermore, building a coalition, should that become the only practical path to power, would call for major policy concessions, therefore weakening some of the more extreme aspects of the reform agenda. Notwithstanding these obstacles, the emergence of Reform UK indicates that many people are yearning for a new political narrative, one that promises to challenge the current quo and solve long-standing issues with innovative, although contentious, answers. Thus, the approaching election is a referendum on the future course of the United Kingdom, rather than only a contest of seats. It examines whether a populist revolution will redefine the national priorities, or if the conventional bipartisan system can adjust to a fast-changing political, economic and cultural scene. The prospect of a government in which Nigel Farage maintains the balance of power challenges some fundamental issues. When their basic ideas vary so greatly, can a cooperation of usually opposing parties survive? What concessions would be required to guarantee that drastic changes avoid aggravating already existing polarisation? Above all, how will the daily life of British people evolve under an administration that questions almost every accepted political presumption? One thing is abundantly evident as the dust settles on this ancient poll: times are changing. A strong indication that consumers are no longer content with business as usual is the development of a respectable third force in British politics. Though one truth jumps out: the political terrain of the United Kingdom is on the brink of a change that might reverberate for centuries. Whether this marks a moment of constructive reform or ushers in an era of more political instability is still to be seen. All told, this historic poll has challenged the conventional Labour-Conservative binary that has shaped British politics for many years. Rebuilding trust and tackling problems like immigration and economic disparity before their basic base disappears will be challenges for Keir Starmer and Labour. The risk for Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives resides in a split right-wing vote and the possible complexities of a partnership, including a growing populist group. And then there is Reform UK, previously on the margins now becoming a potent third force, headed by Nigel Farage, eager to change policies and question the current order. Few months ago, nobody could have predicted the possibility of a reform-led government, or perhaps a coalition in which Nigel Farage holds the balance of power. Still, in the erratic political environment of today, it is a very real possibility, one that begs serious concerns over the direction of democracy, government, and national identity in the United Kingdom. Voters choosing their ballots in the next months will be determining not only on people or ideas, but also on the fundamental essence of British politics itself. Will the existing parties be able to reinterpret themselves and meet the demands of a changing electorate? Alternatively, will the emergence of Reform UK signal the start of a new, more fractured, and maybe more explosive political age? Time will tell just how this goes. For now, the polls' forecasts act as both a wake-up call and an invitation for political rejuvenation, a reminder that in a dynamic democracy change is the only constant. We appreciate you joining us to delve deeply into the shifting sands of British politics. Should this analysis be insightful, kindly like this video, leave comments, and subscribe for more thorough UK political views. Let's keep together investigating the forces influencing our planet now. Keep asking questions, stay informed, and never forget, those courageous enough to question the status quo writes history. Until next time.